In this video, I'm going to be putting together a dashboard layout. We're going to incorporate a couple common elements for this type of page design, including a header so that you have a place for menu navigation, as well as breaking up the page into multiple tabs. That way the user, when they land on this page, they can have different screens, different views, switching from group to group, but they're still on the same page. We're not navigating to different pages in the application, so it gives the user more of a native-like experience. So let's start with the basic page level details here. I'm just going to open up the property editor of the page itself. I'm going to change the title to, say, dashboard. I am going to go ahead and set the background style to a flat color. I'm going to make it a little bit more gray, just so that when I add my groups and other visual elements on this page, I'll set those to white, and then we have some clear separation between the foreground and the background, and it makes it a bit more obvious to create sections of the page there and create some hierarchy as well. I'll switch over to the layout tab here, and for the container layout, I'm going to go with a column layout, right? So now we're in a responsive mode for this page, so everything I add to the page will stack vertically. And my preset right now for this page is set to a full width, which is a pretty comfortable and standard size for, if you're working with laptops and up. Of course, because I do have the responsive engine enabled, my page can still adapt to much smaller screens all the way down to mobile, but this is just going to be my default UI, right? Now let's start with adding our group here at the top of the page to create a header. So I'm just going to draw this on the page, and notice that I'm not really paying too much attention to the dimensions because I'll be able to control my dimensions more precisely by using the responsive settings here. So this group, I'm going to set its container layout to row. That way, everything inside of the group will stack horizontally and go left to right. So that way, if I have menu labels, right, options that I can click on, I have them all stacked horizontally inside of that container. I would like for the group to expand to the full width of the page, so I'm going to remove the fixed width setting on this group. Right, you see how now it is the exact same width as the page right there, 1200 pixels. If you wanted to have some control over that, if for whatever reason you don't want it to stretch to the side, to either side, you can set a max and a min to control the width more precisely. So for example, let me remove the minimum here for a second, and let's give this a max width of 50%, which is 50% of the most immediate parent. In this case, is the page. So if our page is 1200 pixels, 50% should be 600 pixels right there, right, half of it. And so, yeah, so you can really control that. Now, if I wanted to change the horizontal alignment here to center, now I have a nice center header and I've got some spacing on the left and right. So you can really control the positioning and overall dimensions of this. I am going to go ahead and remove that max width so that it expands all the way. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and rename this group so that it says group header. That way it's clear in my elements tree. The more I add elements to this page, the more important these labels are going to be. So it's good to get in the habit of labeling as you go. Now, right now, the height of my group here is set to a minimum of 69 pixels, but it will grow with the content that I have inside. If I have more elements that stack onto multiple lines, then the header will grow because it's fitting to content, but it will not be smaller than 69 pixels. Now, I actually just want to take this down. In fact, I just want to really make this fixed. I should not have a design really where my header expands in height or contracts in height. I always want that to be the same no matter what device I'm looking at this page on. So I'm going to set this to 50, and I'm also going to make the header even darker here so we can really create a frame for this page. So we've got the dark header, we've got a lighter, not fully white background, and then we're going to add some sections here to the page, just to kind of start wireframing our layouts here with some groups that I'm going to make white. That way we can see the separation. Now I'm going to add a couple of common menu items to this dashboard just so you can see how you can put things together, but just keep in mind that there's many ways to go about designing a header like this. I'll start with a simple text here, and we'll call this job board application. And just design it enough so that we can see it and it's centered, just to get more into the habit of working with our responsive settings. So let's just make this white. I'll also make it bold and maybe increase the font size a little bit. But I'm going to go over to the layout settings and make sure the dimensions just fit around the content. So I don't want it to be a fixed width. I want it to fit to content, and I also don't need a minimum on that one. Same thing for the height. I'm going to get rid of the minimum height You see that the boundaries of that text element fit right around the content. I'm going to vertically align it inside of this group, and we may end up changing the alignment settings for this row once I have more information, more elements in here to determine what kind of spacing I want. So on the other side of my header here, I'm going to add a dynamic expression to display the current user's email, right? So if they're logged in, they know who they're logged in as. So we'll use a text element to display a dynamic expression. I just copied and pasted this text here, and I'm going to make this part a little bit smaller, and I want to move this all the way to the right. So in order to do that, I'm going to select the group and change the container layout style of the row. So I have a couple of options. I can do this space around option, where you see how in the little icon here, we have space around the outer edges of the content here, or I can do space between, which will push the outer elements, because I could have more elements in between these two, but it'll push the outer ones all the way to the edges. And from there, I can control things like margins on the right side, on the left side, either on the text elements themselves, or I can go to the group and create some padding. So if I don't want it touching the very left and right edges of the group, I can go to the group and maybe add some left and right padding. So let's do maybe 20 pixels on either side. So overall, the alignment is still space in between, but I've pushed it in just a little bit so we have a bit of breathing room there for those texts. Okay, now this text I'm going to remove the bold, just a little bit of styling there, and inside I want to have my menu items. So let's say we have maybe 3 buttons to act as menu options. So let's say tab 1, because we are going to create some tabs here in our page. Tab 1, and let's make the layout style vertically aligned, centered inside of the group as well. Let's change the style of this a little bit. How about transparent? Nope, that's not what we want. We'll leave it on orange, sure. Okay, so tab 1, and I'm going to copy this. I'm just using my keyboard shortcuts here, Control C and then Control V. All right, the second one is going to be tab 2, like that, and then the third one is going to be tab 3. Now notice that they're evenly spaced here because that's the job of the header, with the row layout style doing that for us, right? We have space in between everything, and so we have even distribution. Now, what if I wanted to bring them in together a little bit closer, but still be, centered on the page, within the group? I can group these 3 tabs together. So I'm holding down my Shift key and selecting them, and now here I can right-click and create another container just for the 3 buttons. Okay, so I'm going to create a row container because I still want them to stack horizontally. And so now I have another kind of level of settings that I can apply just for the content inside of that group. That group doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to have its own background color. It can be transparent essentially to the user. It's just another container to help me control the design a little bit more. So this group, let's call this group tabs, like that. This one I'm also going to set to no minimum width. We'll have it fit to content, but we do need a little bit of spacing in between these two. We don't want them right next to each other like that. So I'm going to add gap spacing in between them, and we'll create some spacing for the columns. Let's do maybe 10 pixels, might be a little bit too little. How about, 30 pixels looks okay there. All right, so that is one way to achieve that. You can, of course, manipulate the outer group as well. I could have also, for the outer group, set this to be centered and then add gap spacing from there as well. If I did kind of 50 pixels, that way everything kind of starts in the center and then pushes its way outward. But I'm going to change it back to where it was, which was just using the space in between. That way my left and right elements are pushed to the sides. And then this group, let's see, we can do this group here. I guess this group is already centered just based on the outer element. And then this container layout setting for this group is referring to the elements inside of it. We're not seeing a difference here between these two because, I do have the column spacing there. But if you had other elements, if you allowed the group to be wider, then you would see a more noticeable difference. All right, so this is a great start here for us for creating this menu, right? So we have the name of the application, some personal detail that's dynamic for the user. We could have a logout button here as well, or a login button to take us to a sign-in page. And then we have our main menu items. So we want these menu items to control what we see on this page. Okay, it's common for single page designs. So I'm going to add my first group to the page. I'm going to make this pretty big because this is essentially going to be the container that has all of the content, right? So I'm creating very clear parents and separation between the sections on my page, and clear background and foreground as well. So this group, we'll call this group tab 1. We're going to center this on the page, and notice how there is no space in between the header or the group below. Well, I'm going to go to the page level and add gap spacing as well. Let's do 20 pixels of space, right? So now it's sitting right below that. We have a little bit of breathing room. And this group, I am going to fix its dimensions a little bit more. Now, I don't want the container layout to be fixed. I'm going to set this to any one of my other responsive settings. Let's bring it back to the center here with this. But the dimensions of the group, I want to fix it so that it can't expand too wide. Imagine someone looking at this on a very large, high-resolution 4K type of screen. In theory, if there's no max width, then it would expand very, very wide, and that might not look great. It might not be a good user experience. So I am going to want the group to shrink down on a smaller screen, right? So I will give it a minimum of, let's say, 320 pixels. That's for the smaller screens. It needs to be at least that wide. But the max, let's set it to 800 pixels. That way we have 200, let's see, you see on the left and right side of the group, very even, 200 pixels on either end. Okay, so everything is nice and centered here. All right, so this is my group 1. Now, I'm going to duplicate this so that we have a separate group for each of our tabs. But inside of this group, before I do that, I'm just going to put some placeholder content. We'll say content for tab 1, so that we know when we're previewing this and we're toggling between the tabs, we know which group we're looking at, because we're only going to see one at a time, right? That's the whole idea, is that this page can house many different views for the user, but we're all on the same page, this dashboard page. So this text, actually, here's what I'm going to do. This group, I'm going to change the layout to align to parent, and then the text inside of it is going to be centered in the center nonent of its parent group. Now, I wouldn't keep this particular layout style for once I am ready to design everything in here, but for the purposes of just putting a placeholder, this is very helpful for me to keep things completely centered. And I'll do the same thing with the dimensions. I just want things to fit directly around the content of my text there, and I am going to make this a little bit bigger. Let's do a heading 3 like that so it's more obvious. Okay, so I'm going to select this group and copy it. Okay, so I'm just using my keyboard shortcuts, Control-C, and then I'm just going to click on the page and Control-V. Right, so my second group is there, and I'll make sure to rename these group tab 2. This is going to be content for tab 2, and I'm going to do it one more time here for the third one. Right, so it looks like it pasted my last copy in between my groups 1 and 2, and I can correct that very easily by going to the layout setting for this group and making it last in the columns, right? Last in my hierarchy of column elements on the page. And this one I'll also rename to tab 3. This one here, the text inside, also tab 3. Okay, and I also want a little bit of breathing room here at the bottom of the page. I don't want that bottom group to be really touching the page. And in reality, we're going to set this up so that things collapse. And we always see everything here at the top. We're only going to see one thing at a time. But when they do collapse, that bottom edge of whatever group is visible is going to be touching the bottom of the page. And so we're going to add a margin for the bottom of these groups. Okay, so we can do here for group tab 3, we'll add a bottom margin, let's say maybe 50 pixels of space. Of course, we can do more. Same thing for tab 2. And same thing for tab 1. Now, another way to accomplish this, of course, is you can put all 3 tabs in another container, and then you put the margin just on that container. And so you only have to do things once for the page level compared to all 3 of these. There's really kind of a combination, mixing and matching different containers to create the exact layout, to help you with, where you're controlling all of your spacing settings. There's no, hard black and white rule for where to do certain things, but hopefully as you watch me go through this, you can see what all of your options are and how you can mix and match this stuff. So now what I'm going to do is make these groups hidden by default. I'm going to uncheck that and collapse when hidden, and do the same thing here for the second group. Check this so that they're hidden by default when I load the page. Make sure it collapses when hidden, which means that the entire height of this group is removed. I don't end up with a bunch of white space here or empty space while it's hidden. And then this group, the same thing, collapse when hidden, and it's not visible by default. And so if we preview the page now, we should just see a blank area down below, but we will see our header up above, and then we're going to hook up our 3 tab buttons here in a moment. Okay, and you can see that my email address is showing here because I'm running as this user. So all of those 3 groups are hidden by default, so now I want to be able to click on these tabs to show them. And we're going to use custom states for this. So on the page, I'm going to add a new custom state here. So I'm just opening up the inspector of my page property editor. I'm going to create a new state, and I'm going to call this current tab. Oops, tab like that. And we'll set the value of the state to a number. I can use any of my custom data types, generic types, option sets, and for most cases, you know, for things like this when we're toggling between screens, I typically use either a number or text. And we're going to go with number this time. And I want to default it to number 1 so that when I first load the page, I'm already looking at this first group and I'm not kind of forced to have to choose one just to begin. Right? And if I want to change my mind to something else, then I can click on one of these other tabs. So in order for this group to become visible when that state value is 1, then we'll create a condition. Okay, so here on this group, I'm going to create a condition so that when my page, so this is the name of my page, when my page's current tab, there's my custom state, is 1, I'm just typing that in, then we make this visible. Right, and so I'll right click on this condition, copy it, go down to the next group, right click, paste, and then when the current tab is 2, this will be visible. When this tab is 3, or I should say when the same custom state, they're all 3 pointing to the same custom state, but they're only going to become visible on unique values. This one will be visible when it's 3, this one when it's 2, this one when it's 1. Now, we set the default value to 1, right? So we start off there. If I refresh the page, we're going to see that first group show automatically like that. Notice that I don't see my other ones. But now I need to change that state value to the second or the third, and so that's what these buttons are for, right? We have an action in the workflow to change our states. So for example, here for tab 2, I'm going to start and edit this workflow. First workflow of the page, we can find the action under element actions, set state, and the element is going to be the page because that is where our custom state lives. So this action is basically asking me, where is the state? I put it on the page, and the state is called current tab. That's what I created. And when I click on this particular button, tab 2, I want to set the state to the value 2. And so the condition on the group for group tab 2 will become true, and so it will become visible. The condition on group 1 will no longer be true, and so that will hide. And so that way we see only one group at a time. So I'm going to do the same thing for the other tabs. And in fact, I'm just going to copy this, paste this twice because I have 3 buttons, and just update the button that I'm clicking and the value that I'm setting in the state. So for this first one, I'll switch this over to tab 1, and the state is going to be 1, right? When we click on 1, we set it to 1. When we click on 2, we set this to 2, and then here, when we click on 3, then just updating the value here, we'll change the value to 3. All right, and so I'm going to update, just refresh the page here. We default to 1, select 2. You see here how it's changing our text because we're looking at a different group. But notice how it's very seamless. Nothing jumps, nothing disappears, and then comes in a flash. And that's because all 3 groups have the exact same design, and really they have the exact same design and dimensions. Okay, so we don't see any growing or shrinking or anything like that in their width or height. But they're also designed the exact same, so it's just very seamless. And we've also set them all to collapse when they're hidden. So that way they all take up the exact same space here. They're positioned in the same place on the page. And I don't have to scroll up and down to see them. Okay. Now, I guess the last thing that we can look at here is how do we let the user know what tab they're on? Maybe it won't be so obvious when we do have the content filled in here, but we can change the appearance of our buttons to basically look at the states as well to show us what tab we're on and what tab we can click onto. And typically with those designs, you'll want to make the inactive tab a little bit more subtle. It's kind of in the background, maybe it's more faded out, versus the one that you're on is more bold, it's active, right? You have it really highlighted and obvious that that's the one that you're on. So let's do the following. How about we change the default background color to white, we change the default font color to just kind of more of a darker gray or a black. All right, and then I'm going to copy this formatting, just right-clicking, copy formatting, right-clicking, paste formatting on the other button, right-click here, paste format. And then in the conditions on these buttons, we'll change the style. I'm going to get rid of these kind of built-in conditions that came from the style that was originally there. You'll notice that I actually removed the style. We had it on a warning button style, and I clicked on the remove button so that it could go away. And that style came with some other conditions, so I don't want those right now. I'm just going to create my own condition to say when the page's current tab is 1, right, then we'll change the background color. Or how about we do something a bit more subtle? How about we change the font color to a, let's do like a brighter color here. Right, so it'll look more like that. That's way too subtle. It's not going to be very obvious for the user. Let's go ahead and change the background color. Let's do a yellow type of color here, like this. Okay, and maybe instead of changing the color of the text, we'll just make it bold. So I've got this turned on so we can see what it'll look like, right, when the condition passes. That's not the default design. The default design is this. And the condition is when the state is 1, then it will apply these appearance changes. So I'm going to copy this condition and place it on the other buttons. I'm removing those predefined ones. And the only thing I need to replace here is the value that it's going to respond to. When the current tab is 2, then it will make the same appearance changes. And over here for the third button, okay, paste that in, change the value. When it's 3, it will respond to those appearance changes. So now we have a better indicator for the user. See, by default it's set to 1, then we go to 2, then 3, and it's much easier for the user to understand where they are. In addition to, of course, all the content changing down below. All right, so that's a quick start for creating a header on your page, adding some elements in there, and creating sections for the page. You can do this for, if you're building a marketplace like we are here where we have 2 sides, you can create one dashboard page for both users, and depending on who the user is, they maybe have access to certain groups or not, or you can create 2 separate dashboards for each one of them. The point is that the more consistent you are with your designs, the more intuitive the app is going to be for your users, and it all starts with just these initial layouts, creating the framework for how things are positioned on the page so that it's easy to understand the moment the user first loads it. And that menu navigation is very important because that keeps them oriented in your app. And as long as you keep consistent with that on other pages, then it's always going to be familiar. You don't want to introduce another menu system on other pages. Stay consistent with what you have. All right, everyone, we'll see you in the next video.